You are very welcome to our session this morning. My name is Zara and I will be chairing this session. Just some housekeeping before we get started. For anyone just arriving, if you could sit in towards the middle of the room and leave the outside seats for any latecomers. If we could be mindful as well of if anyone is leaving before the Q&A, to be leaving quietly. Also, if you could please not use the toilets in this room, that would be really great. Thank you very much. So without further ado, these speakers do not really need an introduction, as many of you will be very familiar with them. Our topic today is self-compassion in autism, being kind and caring for yourself and your mental health. And our presenters are Peter Vermeulen and Wenn Lawson.
Okay, good morning everyone, and first of all, we are very excited to be invited to hold a keynote, but we're also, both of us, very nervous. We never presented together, and who are we? Well, this is undoubtedly the oldest keynote ever at the Autism Europe conference, because together we are almost 146 years old. For those of you who don't understand that, that's 1.5 centuries. And although we might look like the two grumpy old men from the Muppet Show, that's our physical appearance, we will do the opposite of Statler and Waldorf. We will talk about being not grumpy, and especially about being not grumpy towards yourself. So what can people expect from our talk?
Yep, so from this talk, we'll talk about self-compassion. There are various components, 3 opposing, actually, areas of self-compassion. Non-autistic and autistic identity, we will talk about why, if we are autistic, are we so hard on ourselves? It's a bit of a strange term, hard on yourself, but apparently it means you're not very kind to yourself sometimes. Why is that for autistic people more so than non-autistic people? We'll talk about shared humanity. None of us are perfect. I know I keep reminding Peter because he does sometimes think he is, but that's all right. And the environment and supporting self-compassion, not just from ourselves and our own thinking, but from what goes on around us.
I think self-compassion, as far as we know, is the very first time being covered at an Autism Europe conference and maybe at many conferences. But what is it actually? I think most of you are familiar with the term compassion, because compassion is all about be aware of the distress of somebody else, and that in a sympathetic and supportive way. And self-compassion is exactly the same, but then towards yourself, mainly connected to moments when we feel inadequate or when we think we're not successful enough in coping with the challenges of life, or even when we feel that we are failing at things that we're supposed not to fail at. And since it's a quite abstract concept, self-compassion, Wenn and me decided to do a little test with you on your self-compassion.
So things that you might say to yourself if you don't meet your own expectations or somebody else's. Do you say, silly me? Or do you say, oh well? Do you hate your imperfections? I know I do. But do you also accept them as part of who you are? When you fail at something, do you blame yourself? Or do you think, I get it wrong sometimes? We all learn from mistakes. I'm okay. That's a mouthful of things to think about. So it's more an undercurrent of knowing, of acceptance when you mess up. When you feel inadequate, do you think, it's only me? It's always me? And I have that disposition, I'm afraid. I'm not really afraid. That's a term that people use when they're kind of apologizing. Do you remind yourselves the feelings of inadequacy are actually part of being human?
Yes. And this is just some tests that you can apply to yourself, because it's all about what do I think about myself when I fail at something or when I feel inadequate and where things don't work very well. So there's a couple of elements that define self-compassion. So
being kind and forgiving towards yourself. And I had to learn what those things meant. It's easy to say being kind, it's easy to say forgiving, but actually putting that into practice is quite hard. There's that word again. For autistic people, accepting, caring, empathetic towards yourself. It's easy to do this towards other people. Well, not actually, it's not easy, but it's less hard to do it towards other people because we're kind of taught how to accept and forgive others. We're not so easily taught that stuff for ourselves. And if you've come from a background of trauma, it's incredibly difficult not to criticize yourself, to feel responsible. This was your fault. Understanding your sadness and pain is very much part of that trauma kind of understanding. And that comes from courage and wisdom. Courage and wisdom rather than just, it's not just a word, this is a deep-rooted understanding. And we're certainly not sugarcoating our challenges.
I think some of you who are familiar with Buddhism will see some elements here of Buddhism. And indeed, the whole development of science around self-compassion is influenced by Buddhism, because the person who did the first studies on self-compassion is Christine Neff. And inspired by Buddhism, after her PhD, she did some studies on what self-compassion is and how we can measure it. And what she discovered is that there are actually 3 domains in self-compassion, which each, let's say, two entries into that domain. So in total, there are 6 elements, and although they are separable, they kind of interact with each other. They also have an impact on each other. And the first part of self-compassion is an emotional part. It's all about how you emotionally react when you notice that you fail or you don't succeed. And you could then either be kind of kind to yourself, as we learned, as Wenn said, to be kind to other people when they make a mistake. You know, people say, it's okay to be nervous, Peter, when you're on stage. And we've learned to do that towards other people. Or you could also have this kind of cold judgment towards yourself and kind of hammering on your own head. The second thing is all about the cognitive parts. You could think, oh, this is me and this is my problem and I'm the only one who fails, I'm the only one who's not good enough. Or you could, and that's the other hand, see it as part of experiences that all people have. A kind of shared humanity. Okay, I'm failing here, I'm not good at this, but you know what? Everybody is somewhere not good at something. And the moment that you start connecting to other people, that makes a difference. And the last part is how much attention you pay and in what way. You could be either mindful about the unpleasant feelings that you experience at that moment, saying like, okay, I observe my thoughts and my feelings, and there you see the influence of mindfulness and Buddhism, but it is what it is. Or you can start over-identifying, which means you focus all the time on the inadequacies that you experience, on the imperfections, and kind of put too much focus on that. And let's maybe give an example of ourselves, because we have shared humanity, don't we? Except our ugly old face, we have other things in common, don't we?
He's older than me. No, not really. Yeah. So being kind begins with self, not with other people. And that's a different understanding of kindness. We've got 2 pictures of ourselves saying Wenn needs to be kind to Wenn. Wenn needs to be able to give Wenn a hug sometimes. It's the same for Peter. So what's behind the smile? There's a whole lot of stuff for autistic people, especially embedded in trauma, that's behind that smile. So it's harder for us, I think, to accept. There's a lot more trauma going on in our backgrounds as we've grown up, just because we don't belong, we don't fit in. So when other people put us down, and we hear that all the time, we're always hearing that you're not good enough, you're not normal. My mum said to my wife Beatrice a long time ago, oh well, yeah, Wenn was never normal. Oh, thanks, Mum. But that's what you hear, so it's much more difficult to be self-accepting. But this is where we need to start. I'm not a failed non-autistic person. I'm a perfectly perfectly well autistic person, and that makes a big difference to how we see ourselves.
And another thing that makes it a little bit different for autistic people, a little bit harder, is also that what we see often is, you know, the uneven profiles, and then people kind of surprised that you cannot do certain things, like you, when you have a PhD.
PhD.
I'm older, but you're smarter.
No, I managed to get a PhD, but I have problems crossing a road, and I have problems doing my own shopping. And it can be really uncomfortable noticing the things that I can do well and then thinking, why can't I just do that? How come I can't pay a bill? I'll tell you what, if you get bills, put them in the drawer and close it quickly. No, don't do that, don't do that. But I'm fortunate that I have support that helps with paperwork, because that's a really difficult thing for me. So I accept, this is not my thing. I'm better at this, not so good at that. And that's the truth. That's being kind, me being kind to me.
Yeah, and it's also indeed about, okay, accepting this is not something I'm very good at, I'm not excelling at this, and for when maybe it's paperwork, for me, you know, many people think I'm a very social person, but actually I'm a very bad, poor people's leader. And I managed the team a couple of years ago, and that was one big failure. I don't know if it's because of me, but they have a name for that. It's called the Peter principle. You move up and make promotion up to the level that you're incompetent. Well, I was there. But now I've learned that, okay, I'm not a good team manager, and that's who I am. Talking about the self-compassion for the researchers here, because there's not much research or even practitioners. Christine have developed a scale to assess self-compassion, and it's validated. There's reliability and validity, and it has 6 subscales because there are 6 elements, remember. And there's a long version and a short version of it. And by the way, in Leuven, Belgium, where I come from, they did research, and the short version works as well as the long version. The short version only has 12 items, and it's all about scoring, answering questions on a 5-point Likert scale. Now, those of you who are interested, you can even do the self-compassion test on internet. You don't have to have a dog or a cat to fill in the questionnaire, by the way. There's a QR code here that you can photograph, and then you will be directed towards the questionnaire. And it's all about questions like, okay, when something painful happens, do you tend to blow up the proportion of what happened to you? What aspects that you don't like, what do you do then? Do you get down on yourself or not? Now, there are some misunderstandings about self-compassion. And when I think it's important that we cover the misunderstandings about self-compassion.
So self-compassion is not self-pity, feeling sorry for yourself if you get something wrong or you mess up. I miss Zoom meeting after Zoom meetings, far too many, because I suddenly remember when it's over. So I have friends and colleagues who might text me to remind me. So it's not self-pity, it's not self-indulgence, not going easy on yourself. It's working out a way that you can work with who you are, hence the friends helping me needing to reach out and ask for that help. It's not being selfish and self-centered or less caring towards other people. And it's not making you soft, it's a strange expression, and weak, meaning you won't try again. So yes, I'm constantly working on trying to remember Zoom meetings and other things, whilst accepting that I'll need support for that. And that's okay. It's not, oh, gee, you didn't get that, did you? That was breakfast. It's not being weak.
Yeah, and it's also not about using your imperfection as an excuse not to try to do your best for certain things. It's not like, okay, I can't do that, it's your problem. No. Now, why are we talking about self-compassion? We talk about self-compassion because there's not much research, and we'll talk a little bit about the studies, but self-compassion is linked to mental health and well-being, and this is the big topic of this conference, mental health and well-being. And what research has shown And there's few studies with autistic individuals, but in the general population, there is a link, there is a correlation between self-compassion and greater psychological health. Now, when could you just cover a couple of studies that we found that show these links?
Yeah, so you've got them in front of you, but self-compassion actually reduces the risk for depression and for anxiety. It reduces impact of negative affect and loneliness. It's kind of strange to read it all out, but enhances positive mind states. What does that mean? It means that you'll feel better towards yourself when you do things that can feel generally uncomfortable. Shame is a big word, and we came across that in lots of the studies, and that's something that we've talked about here at this conference, and it hangs off us as autistic people. Enhances emotion regulation skills. So when you are forgiving towards yourself, when you accept, I'm not so good at this, but I'm better at that, and I might need help with these sorts of things, then it actually builds tracks in your brain to help with emotion regulation. It's linked to greater happiness. Happiness is overrated, but we won't talk about that just yet, Peter. No. Positive effect, that just means it gives you a sense of, a feeling of positivity and satisfaction with life. When you forgive yourself, it moves you over that little hump of whatever was stuck here, and you feel better. And it's linked to more autonomy. Autonomy just means a sense of control over your life, competence and relatedness. All of these things you can read about in these studies.
Yep, and those of you who are familiar with the framework and the work of Deci and Ryan will definitely recognize the last block, autonomy, competence, relatedness being the three basic psychological needs that all human beings have. Now, there's very little research on self-compassion in autism, and the few studies that have been done showed that on average there's a lower self-compassion in autism compared to non-autistic people. Now, the limits of the studies is that the studies that have been done mainly are the result of online surveys, which means that we get the information from a small group of individuals, but yet it urges us to think about the role of self-compassion in mental health and well-being. This is just one study, when this is another one, isn't it, that we found?
Yeah. Autistic participants reported significantly lower self-compassion than non-autistic. This was in adults, and it's really important to see the difference between non-autistic and autistic people, and to understand the sorts of things we'll be talking about that connect to the environment, as well as our personal take on how we can be kind to ourselves. There's a much bigger thing, a big broader thing at stake than just choosing to be kind to yourself. We have to work with autistic people to build this understanding.
And then there's another study that, nowadays, especially also with autistic children, a hot topic is emotion regulation. We see a lot of children, autistic children, struggling regulating their emotions. But self-compassion is also linked to better emotion regulation. And it's kind of a prevention, I will say, for developing mental health issues like anxiety and depression. Now again, be aware that the studies that we are showing are the result of studies with online service, with adults, and some of them with not even their diagnosis being checked, and many of them women. So actually we don't even know whether there are differences in self-compassion between women and men. So there's still a lot of research to do, and this is a kind of a call for the researchers here. Maybe take it with you on your research agenda for the coming years. Now, research found that self-compassion is on average lower in autistic people, and then you could wonder what contributes to that. What are some of the reasons why self-compassion is lower? And first, it has to do with environment. We will come back to that. But it also has to do with the fact that the autistic cognitive style also leads to an increased negativity towards yourself. When you can talk a lot about this, don't you?
That's a bit of a surprise there, Peter. No. When we understand that as autistic people, we're very one-tracked, we're very mono in our thinking. If we're hearing lots of negative stuff around us, if we're being taught that we're not okay, if we're noticing where we don't fit, then that single focus of our attention highlights that. And rumination and self-criticizing is one of those negative aspects of being monotropic. Absolute thinking, perfectionism, increased self-criticism, they just are one way of thinking about who we are. Uncertainty, therefore, within our brain, it builds the sense of we can't trust ourselves. Other people are saying things. What do we believe? So all that stuff about self-abuse, self-harm, and then leading on into further domestic abuse and abuse by others, we accept that's what we deserve. We don't. We don't. But it's easy to think that we do. Experiences not meeting our expectations or not meeting the expectations of other people, often feeling like an imposter. As we mentioned before, or I did, how can I get a PhD and have problems crossing a road or doing my own shopping? Feeling like an imposter. Someone soon is going to notice that I'm not okay. Well, I'm actually okay. Attribution style, so that's an understanding of where we attribute, if we fail or if we don't fail, who do we blame? It's more common in autism when something does not work out well. Some autistic people have this internal attribution style. They blame themselves. So sometimes some people see a cup half full, others see it half empty. And there's a disposition, DNA, personality, all contribute to those sorts of things.
Yeah, and sometimes children, when they fail at something or they don't succeed or they don't meet expectations, they start blaming other people. And I see that a lot of parents and educators then say, he needs to learn to see what's his part in not succeeding. Now, I understand that we do that, but on the other hand, we kind of reinforce the tendency to have a negative attribution towards yourself. So sometimes, and that's a strategy that I use myself, blaming other people is good for your mental health. Okay, so here's the bad news. That's the bad part of our story. Self-compassion is lower on average, but we also have good news because we want to cheer you up. We're not the grumpy old man. So here's the good news. And that means, first of all, self-compassion is not a fixed personality trait, which means it's something that you can practice. Of course, you need to practice it. It just doesn't come, but it's something that you can learn. So we will talk about how can we support autistic individuals in practicing self-compassion and learning it. But it's not just about the autistic person. I think the environment can also make a big difference in the development of self-compassion in autistic individuals. So the second line, and what we're going to talk about now, is how can we create environments that cultivate and support self-compassion. Now, when it comes to interventions, and this is a message to the professionals here, because all of you are eager, okay, are there any programs that we can use to improve self-compassion? To be honest, since it's rather new and not yet well researched, there's not much out there. The only thing we found is one, if I'm right, I think it's an Australian program that specifically focused on self-compassion, but it was an online program. And immediately you see that there's a large group of autistic individuals out there who can not just participate in online programs. And it was a small research study as well with only 39 adults. It was kind of a 5 weeks program, and it included educational materials, meditation, some exercises, and some self-reflective activities. And they showed positive results. Again, this is a very limited study with a limited group, but they showed that indeed what research shows that if we can kind of nurture self-compassion, it can improve well-being. But also, it's something that you can learn, but learning takes time. So it's kind of a journey. It's not that, okay, I follow this 5-week program and I'm self-compassionate now. So it's something we need to learn, but that's true with many of the things that improve our well-being, like physical exercise or mindfulness or relaxation. You need to practice this. And the people who know me, they know I always Name a number then, how long it takes? 90 days before you start experiencing the effect. But the other thing is that this was a program where autistic people could also inspire each other. But it is something that we need to make autism friendly, because the same study showed that many of the activities that are traditional linked to learning self-compassion are pretty much mindfulness-based. And mindfulness is evidence-based, it works, no doubt about that. But it requires some abilities, cognitive abilities mainly, that are pretty hard for a large group of autistic individuals. You need to be able to concentrate for a while. Sometimes it can be emotionally confronting as well. It takes a lot of energy. And the thing is that many programs on self-compassion are not really autism friendly, only on the level of the instructions. They use a vague language, vague instructions. And one of the autistic individuals who participated in this study said, I was a bit confused because at a given moment the instruction said, take a minute to reflect on your day. And he said, then there was it wasn't a minute, it was only 56 seconds. So, and that's what Annelies Speck in the Netherlands already discovered. Yes, mindfulness is very useful, and it is a big part in nurturing self-compassion, but we need to adapt it and make it autism friendly, and that's the big challenge right now. Now, that doesn't mean that we cannot do things, isn't it? There's many ways that we can kind of support autistic individuals to increase self-compassion.
So what can we do for ourselves? We can be our own best friend, and that sounds a bit weird, because a best friend is a separate person to you, but we can actually cognitively, emotionally be our own best friend. We can think about the environment that we might need. So we might need only to work 3 days a week. We might need a nap during the day. We might need someone to remind us to join a Zoom meeting. Whatever it is that is necessary for us in our environment that supports us to be kind to ourselves, rather than saying, most people work 5 days a week, I should be able to. Most people do whatever it is, I should be able to. No, no shoulds, not the word out. Being friendly to ourselves is welcoming who I am, who we are as individuals, accepting who we are, and then creating what we need to stay safe and to stay feeling good about ourselves.
That's very interesting, but it's still a little bit abstract, isn't it? You also made it more concrete.
Yeah, this concrete thing, do you see the concrete machine turning and the concrete being poured out? It's a very strange term, but apparently it means trying to make it firmer, to gel. Gel? That's what you put in your hair. No, I don't know. Make it more, whatever. Okay, so surrounding yourself with self-compassion reminders. How do you do that? Do you write little sticky notes and put them on the fridge? Whatever works for you. When the words come, I'm not good enough, are there some kind of quotes you could put around to help change that? I've done my best. Everyone finds learning new things hard. I don't have to be perfect. We all make mistakes. It's okay if I can't do this. I might need to do it differently. I love that one. There are lots of things that I have to do differently than lots of the people I know that they do something. I'm a good and lovable person. If you don't feel loved by others, how can you say this about yourself? This one is really difficult to do, I think, but it's very important that we do. Some of the things that happened to me as a kid, with sexual abuse and that kind of thing, they hang on me, and they cause me a lot of stuff that's uncomfortable. So loving myself and feeling it wasn't my fault is a really hard thing to do. So all this stuff we're saying to you, we know is not easy, but we need to be real, we need to be honest with ourselves. I am a good and lovable person. Those things were not my fault. The things that my parents said about me, that's not my fault. The things the teachers said about me, the things the colleagues at work, the boss, that's not my fault. So learning to love yourself accepts all those things, absolutely. Recognises them, but then you detach from that a little bit. I'm a good and lovable person.
And it's also important if you surround yourself with reminders, that you make them attractive. I think for you somewhere there's pussycats and dogs involved, isn't there?
Isn't it great? Well, for me, kittens, pussycats, dogs, birds, I don't know, there's an unconditional love of acceptance about them.
It is.
Yeah, even the magpie that comes to our outside area at home, they trust us. So
They do, yeah.
it's building that trust outwardly helps you to trust inwardly too.
Yeah, we can learn from animals. And about the quotes, I think all of you have quotes that can uplift you. My favorite one is, it doesn't matter if the glass is half empty or half full, as long as you have the bottle. Okay, here's some advertising. I warn you. I'm very proud that recently I finished a book together with Autistic Ambassadors, a book with 250 life hacks for adults. And there's a lot of life hacks in there also on self-compassion. For instance, one tip is, don't compare yourself with other people. It's all about you, and it is you. As Wen said, okay, what other people think about me. What is important is what I think about myself. Self-compassion starts with Wen being friendly towards himself and me being friendly towards myself. Try to find your tribe, because what we discovered is that it's easier to be kind to yourself when you see that things don't work out very well, when you meet other people who have the same experiences, and that's the importance of bringing autistic people together. Now, plan also activities where you can be yourself, activities that can get you into the flow, because mindfulness might be a difficult thing if you can't concentrate on the vague instructions of focusing on the here and the now and letting go. But flow activities, doing something that is really within your interest or special interest, can make the world stop out there, and that helps you to be kind of yourself. And also, as Wen said, please allow us to do things in our own autistic way. You know, it doesn't have to be the standard way. For instance, Zoom meetings, you already mentioned Zoom meetings. Okay, for some autistic people, watching all these faces is too much information to paying enough attention during a Zoom meeting. So then you say, okay, I'm willing to participate in the Zoom meeting, but is it okay that I switch off my camera? Or that I even don't watch at all, but I will listen. So there's many ways we can do things. Also be patient on yourself, because it does take time and practice. And it also helps if you surround yourself with people who are showing self-compassion damn well. So in that way, when the environment plays a crucial role in supporting self-compassion in autistic people.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's strange, but let's say an understanding environment that fosters understanding and accepting of autistic identity. Avoid toxic people, avoid toxic places. You don't have to go there, you don't have to be around them. And that can be difficult if they're in your own family, but it's really important. You have an environment that fosters understanding and acceptance of who you are. An environment that embraces our humanity, and that's joint humanity. There's Peter and Wen here, you see. There's a co-production going on here. This is teamwork. I know it's difficult to understand non-autistic people. I've been studying them for many years. I still haven't quite figured them out, but it is important because we have a shared world and we need to work together. A strength-based environment that doesn't say I'm not recognizing my challenges. It's saying that I'm going to focus on what I can do well. I know there are challenges and I may need help to do so. An environment modeling self-compassion. An environment modeling self-compassion, or pushing the self-compassion button if you self-criticize. So that's up to you then. And sometimes we can give our partners or family, if we feel safe enough, we can give that to them. Just remind me if I'm being a bit hard on myself. Be a mirror for me so that I can see what I'm doing. If you can't easily recognize it yourself, that's a good thing to do, as long as it's safe and you can trust that person.
And indeed, maybe you can ask people around you to help you when you are being hard and very critical on yourself to say, yeah, but. You know, I call that the yes, but person. My wife is my but person. Don't take that too literally. But I have the tendency sometimes to be quite negative about myself, and I ask her, please, when I'm self-criticizing, say, yes, Peter, but. Because usually we do the opposite, don't we? When children at school did something, we say, well, you did a great job, but. And then it's the negative things that follow. And I think we should reverse that into two, okay, but that's fine. And in that way, it's all about not trying to correct in terms of that's not good, you should do it the traditional way. It's all about welcoming autistic identity, isn't it, Wayne?
It is, yeah. And I'm not sure if this is the right place on the slides. Not on the slides, because they're over there and we're here. But
Yes.
to say, to actually mention, and I told the group yesterday, I think it was, that when I was young and I spilt some orange juice on the lino on the kitchen floor, Mum said I had to wipe it up. And I remember saying, I was just beginning to talk, so I would have been around 5 years of age, and I said, too wet. Too wet, can't pick it up. So she showed me, she took a cloth to the sink and she put it gently under the water. She wrung it out so it was just wet, not too wet. And she placed it on the floor over the spill. And it was magic, I tell you. It lifted the spill up, and she did this a few times so that all that juice was gone. I thought it was incredible. And I remember going around the house and spilling orange juice everywhere. So, I know what she was demonstrating. That was really useful. But I hadn't that was an incomplete concept. I hadn't understood. The lino is one thing, the carpet is another. But she was very forgiving and illustrated the difference with me. So we had a few stains on the carpet for a while. But that's the extra mile we need to go to incorporate and understand and welcome the autistic self.
Now, many of the interventions that have been developed to support self-compassion are actually made for people who have the cognitive abilities and the age to do those mindfulness exercises or to attend an online 5-week intervention program. But out there is a big group of people who cannot do that. Does that mean that we cannot work on self-compassion with that group? I think, well, this is a big challenge, but I think we need to be more creative and inventive in translating a lot of mental health and well-being strategies also for the big group who cannot attend online meetings or who cannot sit together with 6 other people and fill in worksheets about how do you think about yourself and so on. So it's, I think, a group that unfortunately has a little bit been underrepresented in this conference that needs, they have their needs for being kind towards themselves as well. And what can we offer them? Well, there I think we make it very, very concrete. One of the things I'm thinking of is often when we make reports, when we do observations of the things that don't go well. What if we would do the opposite and take pictures when they do things that we think, wow, that's nice, and they must enjoy it, and hang up the pictures at the end of the day of all those beautiful moments. They will not be able to fill in a questionnaire, but when they see themselves at the end of the day in all kinds of situations that were enjoyable and where they could succeed and could be successful, even if it's in simple things, I think that could make a difference. And actually here, when that's where we said you were talking about the spilling. Okay, let's talk about flowers now.
Orange juice moment. Yeah.
That's the orange juice moment here, but that doesn't matter.
No, absolutely not. So
other accidents happened as well, I think.
All sorts of accidents happen. And I remember being given an illustration of an accident, and I didn't think that what had happened to me was an accident, because accidents happen with cars. Did you know that? Who's heard of a car accident? Oh, all of you. Yeah, for sure. Well, so I couldn't relate to it. So we need to make sure that the examples, the language, and everything we use, the message that we're giving, relates to that individual. So I need to have something that's connected to what I'm interested in. So if you're interested in The Sims or some kind of computer game, if you're interested in animals, if you're interested in whatever it is, then we can actually use something from that as an example to help illustrate. the accident that we might be talking about, to make sure that we're not giving some kind of message that isn't connecting, because the person already has a concept of what you mean by just the term accident. So we relate it to what's of interest to that individual, because we live where we're interested. That's where we live. So that's where we thrive, that's where we connect, that's where we learn. So we need to be connecting these together.
And I think it's very important that as parents, as teachers, that you're very mindful of the feedback that you give to children, youngsters and adults. For instance, when they make a drawing and they are very disappointed about the drawing that they made and saying, this is not good, well, then you can say, okay, I can see you're feeling upset, but you know what? Things don't always work out the way we expected it would work. Or when they broke your favorite cup, you could say, well, yeah, I feel sad that my favorite cup is broken, but it's okay, you know, accidents happen. And I think in the way we give feedback, we can also put experiences into perspective, into context that is nurturing self-compassion rather than kind of inducing an even more negative self-esteem and lower self-respect and being hard on yourself. So we can do a lot of small things. It's just about being mindful about this that is very important. Yeah, and then also give time that, you know, when life is harder, because you put in a lot of effort and things do not always work out well, that you allow children and youngsters also to take time to get back to the being kind to yourself, because as we said, it's something that just doesn't pop up like that. It takes a while. So I think we should allow children enough time from when they had a very difficult day, that maybe we give them some time to do something that gives them again a positive feeling towards themselves. And also reward them when they show signs of self-compassion, that we at least reward that. It's not saying, but it's okay what you did, because if they said, or taught themselves it's not okay, we should not say it's okay what you did, because they're often smart enough to know that's not true. But what we can do is saying, okay, yeah, maybe it didn't work out the way you wanted, but at least, you know, you did your best, and I'm very proud that you say that you did your best. And so we can model that. And there's a lot of tools out there, and one of the famous tools is social stories. But many of these social stories, and that's what both Wenn and me dislike a bit, many of the social stories are all meant to make autistic children to be kind to other people. I think it's about time that we start making social stories that help them to be kind towards themselves. We're almost at the end, so we will have a little bit of time for questions. Those who don't, yeah, you want to add? Yes.
I wanted to add, if you've got a young person who seems to scream forever, maybe you could say something like, that was amazing, you screamed for 3 seconds less than you did 5 minutes ago. So even when things are not seemingly going well, you can find something that you can actually encourage them, so that screaming probably will reduce. For example, that's just a small example. Can I mention the MOOC? I don't know if we've got that on here. I think so. The Autism and Mental Health MOOC from Curtin University has been produced by, MOOC means Massive Open Online Course. MOOC, nothing to do with cows. I always get a picture of a cow in my head when I use the term, but they're not related, mostly. So if you're interested and you can work with things that are online, doing the MOOC I think is really helpful, because it's been put together by autistic people for autistic people. It's free and it's readily available, and you can work through it at your own time, and there's a special unit on self-compassion in that course. Thank you.
Okay, we're about at the end here. Well, at the beginning we were both nervous, we told that, and we prepared, but we did not prepare live because Wenn lives a little bit too far from where I live, so we did that online. We were very insecure, but then we said, okay, even if we fail, then we can give a good example of self-compassion. So, how did we do? And hope you were not too grumpy here.
Hi. I just wanted to make a comment from when I was young and growing up, I was kind of almost the opposite extreme. So what you were saying about externally blame and all this kind of thing. And in a way that was protective, but what it didn't protect me from was self-pity and feelings of powerlessness. And to me, that in my younger days caused a lot of problems, mental health, things like that. But a lot of similar things work, but emphasizing agency and feeling like you can make a difference in the world and your actions have an effect. Because the opposite is it's all everyone else's fault, but I can't do anything about it. So in the long run, it led me to sociology, social justice, politics, all of that. But it took a long time to sort of what I can affect and what I have to sort of accept that I can't. So similar issues, actually. But I just wanted to sort of say the opposite end of it, kind of.
Sorry, absolutely spot on. Thanks, Damien. And so many of us as autistic people have that sense of justice and fighting for what's right, but feeling no power, powerless to do so. So it's really important that just one person can impact, can influence. It's like that pebble being thrown into the water, eh? And it ripples out. It just takes one of us, and then another one will join you, and then another one. And we've got to keep saying the same things. And that also impacts on connecting to meaning and self-compassion and all these things we've been talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree, Damien, that the whole thing about self-compassion should actually be embedded in a basically empowering approach of people. Yeah.
Very powerful and enlightening. I come from a culture where many things that you said to uplift autistic people are used by neurotypical people to oppress autistic people. I come from a culture where many places do not permit licenses for many professions for people who are diagnosed with autism. It is so eye-opening to come to a place like this, to see autistic people succeed in professional professions where, in the culture I live in, autistic people are not allowed to pursue those careers. To see people of such stature as yourself use the same terminology to uplift that have been used to oppress autistic people in my culture is amazing. Keep up the good work.
Hi, thank you. I agree, this is so powerful. I'm wondering, specifically, Peter, would you consider writing a book on our cognitive strengths specifically? I think that would help with self-compassion, is really learning about the ways in which autistic people interpret data from a strengths-based perspective. Thank you.
Okay, but I think that the autism cognitive style has strengths and sometimes it leads to stress. We should indeed look at cognition in autism in a more neuro-affirmative way. That's what we need to do right now. Yeah, I agree.
I recently came across the term of teaching children to be self-critics to themselves, self-criticism, and I wonder if this impacts for autistic children or people. Is it too much in terms of when you want to teach them self-compassion, if at the same time you aim to teach them to be self-critic, do they link in between them? Is it not too much? Is there anything on the topic about how self-criticism will help or not help?
Avoid using the word criticism. That's a really negative thing. So we talk about, showing videos of people doing athletics and some sport, And what did you notice about this person? How they cleared that box, how they kicked that, what did you think? Do you reckon we can work on that together? Yeah, and then we can video you, and we can compare this video, but I wouldn't use words like self-criticism. It's better to say, you know, you've watched so-and-so play, I know you really like this person, you want to be a bit more like that, let's see how we can build that together. So all our language should be framed in a positive way, even when it's about improving things. Yeah.
It's and the example there was with the door fridge syndrome when your child comes home from school and brings an image, and you have two options to hang the picture on the fridge door or on the wall. You say, I'm so proud, it's the best picture, I'm going to hang it here so that people see it. That's option one. That's when you want to hang that picture, but the other option will be when you involve the child in the process and you say, do you think this picture is good to be so that we hang it here so that people can see it? And then that's how you involve them into the actions, and you give them the option. If they say, I don't like it, then you say, that's okay, we'll not hang it. Let's improve it. Is that it? Is that the positive approach?
Concern about that approach? I have a concern because as autistic people, we already don't think most of the time that we're very good at anything. So if you're going to use that approach, it would be, we'll put that picture there, and certainly nothing about us without us. Absolutely, talk to us about it. If I'm not happy about it, I might not want to put it there, that's fine too, but avoid the analogy of, is it good enough to hang up? I don't think we should make that comparison. We need to be careful in our language.
But we try to employ self-criticism, but we don't call it. We don't call this word, but a little bit we touch it, because it will shape their personality a little bit.
I think it's important to teach children to reflect on themselves and to think about, but the choice of wording is important, but also how big or how small we make a thing. And even if you use the word criticizing, you know, it all depends on the wording. You could say, let's give a positive critique and a negative critique. But the main thing is what Wen says, that will we pay more attention to the things that are negative, or will we pay more attention to the things that are positive?
Definitely on the
and I
things that
think,
are positive.
yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Hiya. I mean, lower. I worry about the maintenance of self-compassion because, you know, you say avoid toxic people, avoid toxic situations, but it doesn't matter how much self-compassion you practice. There's always incoming, and there are always toxic people, and we don't necessarily have the ability to avoid the person at the bus stop, the person at work, the neighbour who lives next door. So I worry that self-compassion can be subsumed because the toxicity can be quite overwhelming, and it doesn't go away over a lifespan, you know, it continues. Thank you.
I understand totally, Cos, and you're quite right. So it's the maintenance is the issue, and that's why we have to keep visiting and revisiting, so that the seeds that we plant and feed are those that will nourish self-compassion rather than those that will harm and put us down. And it is an ongoing thing. You're quite right, we can't always avoid toxic people or places, but we can still be kind to ourselves and understand that it's not me, it's them. And the times that I have with people that are more compassionate and more uplifting, spending time with people like Cos, for example, and others are friends that will encourage me. So I choose to believe this, I let go of that, and it's constant practice. It's a journey, as Peter said.
Hi, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for your talk. That was very inspiring. Actually, I did an intervention evaluation in Peru, and I used also self-compassion. So I used acceptance and commitment therapy, informed intervention, and also self-compassion in one of the modules. So that was for caregivers of autistic adults with learning difficulties, was for the caregivers. However, I have a question because this is part of my PhD research project, and I'm thinking like after your talk, I had an inspiration to maybe do a postdoc based on just, in this case, for the autistic adults with learning difficulties, this type of intervention. So my question is, what would be useful? I would like to know your opinion. For example, in the module, that specific module about self-compassion, what we did is, for example, an exercise that, according to Kristen Neff 2023, so it's like to hug yourself, right? For the time you feel comfortable, and maybe this way or maybe the way that you feel comfortable. So I modeled that, so and the people, like the participants, did the same. And then they could do, so I, for example, told them that they could do that activity when they feel like they are really overwhelmed, or maybe and it doesn't take much time. So the results, they told me that for them was really useful because they felt like they had a friend on themselves, or they didn't need anyone else. So do you think that would be useful to do, for example, this activity with autistic adults with learning difficulties? Thank you so much.
I think indeed with people, we need to make it very practical, but it's always important to check whether they afterwards report in what way that helped them or not. And the second thing is things like, okay, hugging yourself. If you can't do that or you hate hugging yourself, deep pressure could be having the same effect. But then we need to plan it. I think telling autistic people, do it when you need it, is often too difficult for them. So it should be part of the curriculum, for instance.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that interoception, so our inner sensory system, is often offline for autistic people. We don't necessarily know what we're feeling. We often don't know if we're hungry or thirsty, for example. So there needs to be an interoceptive side to what you're doing to build up connection so that we can actually get in touch with what our emotions are. So if you put your arms around yourself and you're just like, there's nothing, there's no connection, it's not going to actually travel very far. So I think there's two sides to what Peter said, and check out interoception.
Thank you. Thanks.
Time for one more question.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you. We have followed many sessions, and when the session you gave yesterday was the first one that made me feel hopeful and made me leave with a smile on my face. And when we saw you were talking with Peter, we didn't want to miss it, because listening to Peter also always makes us very happy. Dank u, Peter.
Okay,
yeah.
and last comment, and then we stop really. It was a real honor for me to co-present with Wenn, and what we also wanted to do is that when autistic and non-autistic people collaborate, we can make one big great team. So let's continue collaborating rather than blaming each other. Thank you.
Thank you.